Hello there. It's March 12th. I'm sat here, kind of a nice spring sort of day, and Jonah's asleep on the floor. Otherwise, I'd pick him up and say hello, but I don't want to disturb him. But he may join us um, because I think he's kind of, itching to sort of get back to the house. Anyway, it's March the 12th, and I've just come from a funeral, and I said a nice funeral. I've said to you before, I enjoy funerals, and I do. So anyway, this was a funeral for a lady called. Her name was Romaine Klyak. Okay, and and when Sister Mary Ann told me we had this funeral coming up, she said this is for Romaine Klyak, and she's a long time parishioner. You know. Anyway, it turned out that Romaine Klyak has no next of kin. Husband has died. No children. Her siblings are dead and they had no children, and so it was just her. And so this funeral was organized by her neighbors, and it seems like the neighbors were quite important in her life. But anyway, this Romaine Klyak, seems like a completely unknown person, and yet it turns out that she was quite well known in her own way. And she was best known, apparently, here at Church of the Holy Spirit. She was known as the cereal lady. And she was known as the cereal lady because she used to donate boxes upon boxes and boxes of cereal to our food pantry. And she did that for many years in a very quiet way. And so we prayed for her today. It was a very small funeral, and it was just, us and, the few neighbors who were present. But it just reminded me that, when Sister Mary Ann said to me, this is a long-time parishioner, that in of itself was enough to know about her. That in some ways the fact that she'd been here a long, long time, is a sign of a great commitment to Jesus in her life, to her faith life. But more importantly, I think that the great sign of Jesus' faithfulness to her, the fact that he kept her faithful. And it's, oftentimes we think that, the people who are really, really faithful, it's because they're just really special people and they're extra strong, or they're just really good. And they are good people, but the source of that goodness always is Jesus. So that, like this lady Romaine, I know that she was faithful and very devout in her faith. But what it says to me is that she was a long-time parishioner here because, God blessed her. God blessed her with the gift of faith, and kept her faithful, and kept her on track, and kept her with him, really. So she's one of like those saints who just live in the shadows, in the background. One of those people that not always in the front, but working quietly in the background, just faithful servants of the Lord. And God blesses that kind of work. Just people just going about their duty and going about their business, and God blesses that. And he blessed, Romaine Klyak, and he kept her faithful here at Church of the Holy Spirit. So today it was an honor to be able to celebrate her funeral. I just wanted to share that with you, that very often we don't have to be doing the big things. But I mean, just being faithful is sign enough that God is with us, because he is the source of our faithfulness. The graces that we receive are the things that enable us to keep on track and keep us praying and coming to church and things like that. So just share that with you. So that's one thing I wanted to share. Hope I don't forget the other things. There are a number of things I wanted to say today. Secondly was that on March the 2nd, our new bishop, Bishop Jeffrey Grobb, he came to see us, at CHS, and he came for a gathering of priests, the local priests, or the priests of the vicariate. They were invited to join him here at our parish for an afternoon of reflection, and it was really nice because it was the first time that any one of us had seen each other really, properly, in like a year since the whole lockdown business. So it did us all good just to meet, and I got to meet the local clergy, the local pastors, some of whom I knew, but we'd not actually met properly together. So that was really nice. That was kind of encouraging, made me feel a lot better about who we are at this present time. But the thing I wanted to say about that was that Bishop Grob, before we met with the other priests, he came and sat down with me, and he did all the paperwork, and he took my oath of fidelity and all the necessary thing to install me as the pastor. Because as you know, normally in Chicago, there is like a ceremony, a special mass, during which, the priest gets installed as the pastor to make it official. Well, because of COVID, we've not really been able to do that because we just haven't been able to have like a big event. So instead of that, Bishop Grob came to see me on March the 2nd, and he took my oath, and I signed off, and he signed off. So now I am actually officially the pastor here, canonically by law, which means it'll be more difficult to get rid of me. But it also means, I'm committed to being here with you too, which is a great joy to me, And he did sort of say, that down the line things get better and things open up more, than if we do actually want like a celebration, he'd willingly come along and celebrate Mass for us, and we just do the symbolic stuff. But the bottom line is, I am now officially your pastor here at CHS, and I'm very happy to be so, and I hope you are too. Okay, so that was that. The third thing I want to say is that tomorrow, Saturday, March 13th, which also happens to be my mother's birthday, happy birthday, Mum, we have here between 10 a.m. and 12 noon, we have confessions. In lieu of a reconciliation service, we just have 2 solid hours of the Sacrament of Reconciliation for those who wish to come and celebrate that sacrament before Easter. And I will be here, and Father Dan Smolanek will be here, and it'll all be sanitized and controlled as usual. There'll be a screen, and there'll be distance, so you can do that in a safe way. And I just encourage you, it's been a while since you celebrated the Sacrament of Reconciliation, to come. There's no harm in just putting yourself out there before Jesus and sort of saying, well, I think I've been failing in this area of my life, or I need a bit of help there, and just see how beautiful the grace of this sacrament works in your life. Okay, and just be ready then for Holy Week and for Easter, which follows. Okay, so that's the other thing. And then finally, the other thing I wanted to talk about today I mentioned last week about the Paschal Mystery, which we celebrate at the end of Lent. Those 3 days, Holy Thursday, Good Friday, and Holy Saturday. The 3 days which make up one big event, which we call, the Holy Triduum, or the Sacred Triduum, rather. Okay, it's when we as Catholics we journey with Jesus through his passion and his death and his resurrection, and we come out the other end renewed. It's also the time when we welcome new members into our church, when people, adults, become baptized and they follow Christ too. So it's a great joyful time. It's also a very mysterious time. We call these 3 days of services kind of mysteries. They are Easter mysteries, because it just brings us into a different world, really, and a different time. And Jesus intentionally wants us to do that so that we can, become more immersed in his love and what he wants of us. And it's a great and wonderful experience. And if you haven't ever done it, then I invite you to be a part of those 3 days at the end of this month, or the beginning of April, rather. But the first day really is Holy Thursday, and that service that we celebrate in the evening is probably the oldest of the services for Holy Week that we have, and it's called Holy Thursday, or very often Maundy Thursday is another old word, Maundy, Maundy, and the word Maundy comes from the Latin word mandatum, and that word is coming from the Gospel from that night, which is when Jesus orders us, if you like, or commands us that we should serve one another, and he kind of abases himself and he washes the feet of his disciples. And that's basically what happens, on Holy Thursday during the Mass of the Lord's Supper. There are kind of like three themes, really, I suppose. The one theme is what they call the institution of the Eucharist. It's when Mass, what we call Mass, it's when Jesus gave us himself in the form of bread and wine, and he showed us, that we should do this always. He predicts, that what's going to happen in the following days, but he shows us that he's given himself completely for our sake, out of love, but that we will always have him in this form every time that we celebrate his life through the sharing of bread and wine. His body and blood become apparent, and that's so important because everything else about our faith finds its way back to that moment at the Last Supper. That's the biggest mystery of all, that Jesus gives himself to us in the form of bread and wine. And that's what makes us kind of, uniquely in some ways Catholic. And so really is like the heart of our faith. So the institution of the Eucharist is one major kind of celebration on the night of Holy Thursday. It's when we put ourselves in that upper room with Jesus and the disciples. It's when we celebrate once again what is real to us, that Jesus gives himself to us fully. And therefore, the command then from that is to give ourselves fully too, one for each other, to give ourselves in a life of service. And that's what they call is like the institution of the priesthood, but the priesthood of everybody, not just the ordained priests, but the ministry which we're all called to, which is to serve each other, to wash each other's feet. That doesn't come easy, to sort of like humble ourselves to go and wash somebody else's feet. And that's metaphorically, as you know, although sometimes we may have to wash somebody else's feet, but be able to give of ourselves and to put ourselves at the needs of another person, and that being central to the life and the ministry of our church. It's all celebrated in a very mysterious way, on the night of the Lord's Supper. So it's a very kind of solemn and yet beautiful occasion when we gather as a church. And what sets in motion from there, you see, is that we walk with Jesus from the Lord's Supper then, as he did at the end of the Lord's Supper. He went off to pray with his disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane. And so the usual celebration of Mass doesn't finish with a dismissal or the following, or the end of Mass as we would normally end. It ends in a much kind of more solemn tone, It ends really, it doesn't really end. It just, we celebrate, and the Mass finishes quietly with what is remaining of Jesus present in the consecrated bread. That is transferred to a different altar, like what they call an altar of repose, which in some ways becomes the Garden of Gethsemane. And we're invited to be with Jesus and to watch with him while he awaits, his arrest and his betrayal with Judas Iscariot. So it's quite dramatic, really. This year, because of COVID, we are kind of limited in what we can do ceremonially. We're not actually allowed to, have the altar of repose with people watching physically. But we'll be invited to watch with Jesus at home, when we leave the Mass, and to enter into a solemn time of reflection, and to realize that we journey with him now into Gethsemane, where he's waiting really to be betrayed, and then the events that follow that, the events of the following day, and his path to Calvary. It's a very beautiful, reflective, contemplative time. And so, as I say, we can't do the normal stuff that we would do. So we can't have foot washing, or we can't have all the bells and the whistles that we would normally have, and there won't be processions or any of that kind of stuff that people like to have, the sacramental kind of stuff. But we have the core of what it's about, which is Jesus at table with us, giving himself for us and to us, and sort of saying, I'm showing you this way, now you do the same. Wash each other's feet. Give your life to one another in the same way. And don't forget to celebrate, this Eucharist, so that I will be with you always. It's a very beautiful, it's really about, what does, our friendship with Jesus really mean? What does our relationship with him really mean, with somebody who's actually giving our life? How do we respond to that? When somebody says, I'm giving my life for you, how do we just sort of say, oh, thank you very much, have a nice day? Do we even process that? Does it compute? Does it make any sense? Or do we, sort of say, well, wow, you're giving your life for me. Do I have it within me to give my life for you? But they are the questions which are being asked, when we celebrate Holy Thursday. And so that's why it's so special. And I really hope that you can join us here on Holy Thursday at 7 o'clock for the Mass of the Lord's Supper. And that's the first day of the Holy Triduum. As I said to you, it's like 3 days in one. Don't think of it as like, in some ways, 3 days, but like 3 steps. And be with us for it all, For some reason you're not able to make it physically, then please, join us streaming, online. We have the Mass of the Lord's Supper beamed into your homes, But it's a beautiful time. It's kind of like essential, It's like it's Catholics 101. That's what I think of the sacred Triduum, and it's a very beautiful, transforming time. So please join us for that. In the meantime, we have this coming Sunday, which is Laetare Sunday. I read my bulletin article and listen to my homily, and then this next Friday, a week today, we have the feast of Saint Joseph. Okay, Feast of Saint Joseph. So, lots to celebrate, lots to think about, lots to do. Most of all, lots of prayer. So, let's get to it, right? Thanks for all you do, and thanks for your support of me here in the parish. I feel very privileged and blessed to be your pastor, and I look forward to working even closer with you in the months and the years to come. I'm afraid Jonah is asleep and snoring, so I will not disturb him. So I'll see you this time next week, okay? Take care. Be joyful. Keep the faith. Ta-ra.